My name is Brian Cass. I am Senior Curator and Head of Haywood Gallery Touring. This exhibition, After the End of History, offers a portrait of working class life that goes against expectation. It brings together around 25 artists who create visually compelling, subtle, nuanced, surprising, complex and counterintuitive images of working class life. And our aim with the exhibition was really to offer a portrait and to kind of celebrate working class community, working class creativity, that desire to create, that desire to express, and that desire to communicate, but also not to avoid the kind of barriers that make those things so difficult. Those barriers like inequality, lack of support, lack of representation, stereotypes, and really try and offer a diverse reflection of contemporary working class life as it is lived today.
I'm Johny Pitts. I'm a born and bred Sheffielder, currently based in London, and I'm the curator of the show After the End of History, British Working Class Photography 1989 to 2024. We work very closely with the team at the Haywood, led by Brian Cass, to produce a show that I think fills in some gaps in terms of the photographic history of this country. Usually when I work on a project, I begin with something that is inclusive. But I think with this project, actually, for the first time, I created something that began by thinking about what I wanted to exclude. And that was like a lot of the kind of brilliant, beautiful photography made by middle-class photographers about the working class in the kind of 70s, 60s, 70s and 80s. Those kind of protests and people who've been down the pits and things like that. That is all really important work, but it didn't chime with how I grew up working class in Sheffield during the 80s and 90s and 2000s. So here I thought, well, let's have a time frame that kind of begins after the end of history. That notion of, by Francis Fukuyama, that like when the Soviet Union fell, Western liberal democracy was the only way. But I think what's interesting about that work is it captured a kind of zeitgeist of the feeling at that time where communism or any alternative vision to Western capitalism was no longer viable. And I think that changed the kind of makeup and identity and culture of the working class. And I was really interested to see all that kind of what happened after '89 and after the fall of the Berlin Wall, what happened to working class identity. And so I started looking at all the photographers who've been working in this period. And so what that did is it created these boundaries for the show. I'm working in that specific time frame, and I'm working with photographers for the most part who didn't grow up with money and had to find ways to create work with a kind of lack of a network, a lack of financial resources. And what happens is different spaces start to get documented in quite different ways, even down to the use of technology. So you get a different kind of aesthetic sensibility, I find, even though, of course, in here the aesthetic varies considerably. But that's the whole point, in a way. I kept talking about how I wanted this exhibition to be a kind of big mess in the best way possible, where you have, rural working class lives colliding with multicultural dance floors at jungle raves in the 1990s, colliding with corner shops, and just this kind of real mashup of different fragments of life that I think really is what working class identity is all about. At least that's what it's been about for me. What was important for me was to start with about kind of 10 photographers who I just couldn't do the show without, in terms of like their iconic images, that people would expect to see, like Richard Billingham behind me. Really key work when you're thinking about what working class photography is. But after that, I started wanting to go into places where people might not be familiar with the kind of the work that was being done. People like Barbara Wasiak and Nathaniel Telemack, and the work over here of Trevor Smith that was taken of the WBO featherweight champion in the 90s, British Yemeni champion, Prince Nazim Hamed. So I think what you get in here is you get some really iconic works that kind of is the glue between lesser known works. And so what I really hope is that people come into this show thinking they know what a show about working class photography will look like, and then actually enter and see something a little bit counterintuitive, a few surprises, see some names that they've never heard of before.
There's a staggering difference, I guess, in terms of representation of working class voices. And it's really important for people to kind of see themselves in their own lives in these kind of museums and galleries. We were very kind of conscious of the partners we were wanted to work with on the exhibition. They all have really strong, kind of diverse working class cultures, and that's something we really wanted to kind of celebrate. So it's really important to be in the Herbert. I'm always surprised, I'm always astonished when we come and visit the Herbert, the range of work they do, the remarkable collections, and the real kind of serious intellectual engagement that they also have with their audiences, and also about all the works that they kind of show here. And that's really also at the heart of this show after the end of history. We want people to be surprised, we want to celebrate difference, and we want to create an exhibition that holds many things and creates multitudes.